It is Friday, January 24th. I'm Geoff Schwartz. That is Matt Ford. This Geoff Schwartz is smarter than you. So get ready for conference championship weekend. Two football games this weekend. Matt's Commanders, the Commanders, an NFC championship game. My Kansas City Chiefs
Wow.
playing afterwards. We'll talk about this all. We're presented or with help from Pine Sports. Go to pine-sports.com/subscribe. It's an AI tool that we have been using religiously over the last couple of weeks and months to prepare for this show. I typed in, Matt, rookie quarterbacks in conference championship games. It popped up to 5 results. Doesn't look good for your boy Jaden Daniels, but very quickly I got 5 results. I got the stats for the game. I got a recap of the game. I got it all. I looked at my player props, which I'm going to give you at the end of the show. Does the player prop model agree or disagree? And as usual, not as usual, but we did this last week. We're going to give you our top 5 wagers for each of us and the 5 that Jaxon, the AI tool, likes from Pine Sports. All 3 of us were 3-2 last week. So that is a winning week for props in the divisional round. We hope to do that again this weekend, Matt. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Jeff. We've spent a lot of time on this show talking about the Commandantes over the years, and
Yes.
it's never really been relevant, but it is extremely relevant right now. Like I don't even have to do a whole Commanders thing. Like we're just going to talk about them because they're playing in the NFC
Yeah.
Championship. What a world. Do
It
you
is.
think, can you imagine if at any point in the season, Jeff, I could have told you like, hey, there's a chance that like we'll actually be like shit talking each other during the Super Bowl as two fans of our teams. Like
Are,
it could be a Commanders Chiefs Super Bowl. It's
are you
possible.
coming to New Orleans if they're in? What do you think?
I mean, I this might be breaking news to my employer, my wife, my friends, my financial institutions. I will do whatever it takes to get there if they're actually in the Super Bowl. We'll see.
Well, I mean that means
Big
that our
assignment this
wives and
week.
employers are listening to this show, which is always a maybe.
Correct. It's just you, me, and Jackson, brother.
It's just the 3 of us finished together. If you do like our show, which if you're listening, I think you do, please leave a rating and review, and share it on social media. Why not? Get us some more people in here, and of course, again, pine-sports.com/subscribe. Use promo code Jeff to get half off the first month. Guys, it's just a great research tool, man. It's fantastic. I just implore you to check it out. If you don't like it after a month, obviously you can cancel. It's fantastic. Matt and I have both been using it a lot. And Matt, the best part about the Commanders thing is that I'm very well prepared on Chiefs and Bills. I'm prepared on
Mhm.
Eagles Commanders, but you're an expert in this game. So I'm going to let you go first. You
Cool.
talk about Commanders and Eagles. It is currently 6, I believe, is the
Yep.
number. I don't know what the total is right now. You can update me on the total. How do we feel about the Commanders and Eagles Saturday afternoon in Philly?
Yeah, 47 and a half is the total. You can get a 6.5 at FanDuel, and I think they're the only 6.5 out there, which is interesting. Yeah, so it's obviously the third time these two teams have played. In the past, when teams meet for a third time, I think since in the last 20 years or so, 11, 18, 18, 11, and 2 against the spread for the road team, which is interesting. I think that generally means, the underdogs tend to keep it close, right? Home
Yeah.
team's usually favored. Um, Look, the 2 times they played, obviously Washington gets a lot of they got a lot of skepticism, I'd say, for the last time they met, where Jalen Hurts left the game. Kenny Pickett came in, led it right away to a scoring drive, by the way, but didn't it obviously they don't get tons of credit for that win. That was one of the craziest games of the season. They had
Yeah.
5 turnovers and ended up winning. They put up the most points on the Eagles defense of any team this whole season. Um, and then the Eagles in the first game, they won that. That was a Thursday night game right after Hurts or Daniels' injury.
Yep.
And Washington, it was a home Thursday night game for Philly, and it was an 8-point win. It was one of those games where you look up and you're like, are the Eagles going to blow this one? Like, what's going on here? So 2 games, the margin of victory for Philly was a combined 5 points. So I think these two teams are much closer, um, just as a matchup, not necessarily talent wise, but the two most important things I think in football are your coach and your quarterback. And Washington's, I think, got an edge in both spots. I don't think that's a hot take at all. And then the rest of the team, Philly's pretty much got them. Maybe not a kicker,
Yeah.
although Jake Elliott had a nice week last week. The thing to watch, I think, especially for people who are fans of Jeff in this show, is the right guard for Washington,
Yeah.
Sam Cosmi,
Uh,
probably the best lineman on the team. Tore his ACL last week. That's the Jalen Carter spot. So Jalen Carter, I debated putting him getting over a half sack in my picks this week. But I think, Daniels is so hard to bring down that he might disrupt the game in other ways.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a huge matchup. And then obviously like Hurts's health and AJ Brown's health. Like for the first time last week, I think Marshawn Lattimore had a good game in Washington. He was targeted once for no yards, no completions. So it'll be interesting to see if he's on AJ Brown, who's already seems to be a bit limited. So I think this is going to be a good game. The last 2 weeks, you've heard me come on this show and say like fun probably stops here. But now I can't sort of help but let myself dream about this one. I do feel like the Commanders, it's obviously everyone seemed to be taking the Eagles at 4.5, and now it's moved up to 6.5. So uh, the books are probably rooting for Philly now, which is a dangerous place to be in if you like Washington. But I think they can cover the 6.5, and I think it's going to be a fun game.
So I am just from a gambling perspective, I'm hoping there's seven pops up, which we saw against the Rams, Eagles, that there were some sevens pop up on game day, which I don't think we thought would get there. This is one of those where it's like you have this Commanders, this great run they're on, which should be commended. It's an incredible run. They've won 14 games. It's not like a fluke team that just got in the playoffs 9-8 and just sort of scrambled by. They beat Tampa Bay and they beat the Lions. The Eagles are just a different monster, in my opinion. You talked about the offensive defensive lines. I think that greatly favors Philly. The run game of Philly, like how is Washington going to stop the run game? Like if the Eagles just say we're giving 25 rushes to Barkley, Hurts is going to get 7, and Gainwell is going to get 5. Like what's the path for Washington? They might sell out and try to stop that, and then obviously the Brown and Smith become more weapons in the passing game, or Goddard and Jurgens both practiced today, by the way, the center and the tight end for the Eagles. Um, the path for Washington is just Daniels playing incredibly well again, right? And throwing for 350 and just like up tempoing them to death, right? We see the Commanders are up tempo offense. They don't huddle very much. And in a game against the Eagles defensive line, that Carter and who's the other Georgia kid, Davis, right? Like you want to tire those guys out, so you don't huddle. But then if you don't huddle and go 3 and out, you screw your defense. If you don't huddle and go 2nd and 11, now the Cosme absence becomes a huge problem. One concern I have in this game is the fourth downs, Matt. The Commanders are at a historically great fourth down team. If they go 1-5 this game and come back down to earth, it's a 3 touchdown Eagles win, right? Like that's my big concern here. Is like if it just derails a tiny bit, do the Commanders have the same ability to keep this game close? I will tell you how I want to wager on the side and total in this game. I think the Eagles are going to play well. I really do. Um, I think the Commanders getting 10 plus points in this game at some point is a way to bet this game, because the Eagles have shown at the end of games they play this prevent defense and they give up a ton of points. Look what happened last weekend. Like I don't see this game being a 3 touchdown win for the Eagles. The fourth down thing does concern me, but I do think if the Eagles score first, get the ball, score first, go up 7-0, you're going to get 10.5 points. You probably don't, not there, probably at 9 points by then. At some point, if I get double digit points, Matt, I'll happily take the Commanders in game getting double digits.
That's an interesting way to play it. I think a couple of things. The first is when the Commanders and Eagles have played this year, um, there's been it's the Saquon Barkley experience has been pretty obvious, and it was sort of like the Rams game last week. Like the first time they met, Barkley didn't do much for the first 3 quarters, and then had I think 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter on that Thursday night game and
Yeah.
iced it. And then the next time they played, Saquon had 123 and 2 touchdowns in the first half. And then on the second half, he had 16 carries for 27 yards. So I do think that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt like have figured out. I think they're going to sell out, stop the run. I think they have to, and see if Jalen Hurts is healthy enough to beat them downfield. So I do think they'll have a good plan for that. And this Washington defense, obviously not a great unit, but I do think they've sort of changed with Lattimore in there. Their corners have been playing a lot better. Jared Goff last week had a ton of just like mental, it was either confusion or just mistakes. After that Houston game where he threw 5 picks in November, he had 3 picks the rest of the season. And he came out last week and looked totally befuddled by what Washington was throwing at him. So I do think that they have Kingsbury gets a lot of love, but I think Quinn and crew are going to have a good plan here. But I agree. I think Philly is one of those teams where it's like if they can just put together 4 good
Yeah.
quarters, I think they're probably the best team in the league. The question is, can they do that? Does their coach get in the way? Is their quarterback healthy? And is Jaden and crew, are they able
Yeah.
to sort of move the ball against this defense the way they did really in both games? It was, the first game, Daniels was definitely not himself. Can I, to that point, can I say something about Jaden here? I have
Sure.
just like a little bit of an issue that I think with some of the discourse on Jaden Daniels. One of the things I hear all the time with him is like, this isn't going to last. He's going to get injured. Like,
I
have you
hate
heard
that.
this discourse? So
Yes.
like
Yeah.
a couple of things about that. It's like Nate Burleson told me once, the injury rate in football is 100%.
Correct.
Everyone gets hurt. I'm talking to a guy who famously who sends posts pictures on Instagram or videos on Instagram of his injuries. Like this is a topic that you are very
Yeah.
familiar with. Um, but I just think that it's such a lazy take, and it's like, yeah, he's thin, like whatever. Jaden played 5 years in college and had a concussion and a sprained ankle. Like at some point, I do think you have to look at this body of work,
Yeah.
and I think people are just not understanding what's happening, and they're just sort of like, it's not going to last for X reason, X reason, X reason. And I just feel like this injury discourse is just kind of gross. Like it's just kind of bothered me.
So I covered him when he got to Arizona State. He was 175 pounds soaking wet. And I instinctively said the same thing. Guy's going to get hurt. And he never got hurt. Like it didn't happen. Playing the SEC, didn't get hurt. All quarterbacks get hurt at some point. The question is how
Yep.
bad and for how long. So it's just haterade. It's just people hate on Jane Daniels. It's that simple. He's really good. I told you this privately. I texted this to you. I mean, to where you're at as a Commanders fan is like if you can't win a Super Bowl, you want to be a Commanders fan right now, which is that like the future is so bright. You have your quarterback and your head coach and a ton of cap space. And a
Yep.
GM that clearly Adam Peters knows what he's doing with personnel because you improve the roster with a bunch of B level free agents, right? B and C level free agents. Now you add a couple A level free agents, a couple more drafts, and all of a sudden this team is contending for championships. But you're there in year one. I think the winner of the AFC wins a Super Bowl. But I don't think you can deny that the Commanders are way ahead of schedule right now.
Yeah. It's interesting watching the rest of the league sort of do the like, well, how do we do this? What are the steps? And
Jane Daniels.
yeah, get Jaden Daniels and probably get maybe like the best GM candidate that's been on the
Yeah.
market in quite a while and have a karmic reset. Like I think there is just sort of some karma that's just kind of like come back to Washington, I
Yes.
think in the good vibes.
I agree.
Okay,
I'm
so
with you.
you're gonna, I mean,
Well,
I know your picks. You're not gonna pick a side here. If you
no,
had to take the
I got some
six,
props.
if you,
I would probably, I mean, it's a cop out, but I would tease the Eagles down to pick them.
yeah,
That's what I would do. And then
yeah,
take the Bills. But we'll talk about all those. So for those who, again, may miss the beginning of the show, we'll give you wagers. They're all going to be at the end of the show. We'll preface that by saying we'll give you all the wagers, 5 of them, and maybe I'll throw in a couple others at the end of the show as well. All right. Chiefs, Bills, Matt. Third or fourth time meeting the postseason. Chiefs have won all 3. Games
it's
feel
gonna
like
be great.
they get increasingly closer. Um, this is not the best handicap, but I'll say this. The Chiefs have not turned the ball over in 9 games. The Bills have a historically low turnover rate this season on offense. This game's going to come down to something that we cannot see: a fumble, a tip pass, a missed field goal, a kickoff return. And what we see often is the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL taking advantage of other people's mistakes. And if the Bills don't give them mistakes, the Bills are going to win this game. If the Chiefs can force a mistake or two or some bad plays, the Chiefs will win this game. I lean Chiefs money line because I think the Chiefs, this, until proven otherwise, I'm taking Kansas City in this game. And I think way too many people are looking at the offensive results of last game and thinking that's the way the Chiefs are going to play in this game. They were off for 24 days and played a really good Houston defense. The Bills defense is not the Houston Texans. They're missing at least one safety, probably 2. Matt Milano may be back, or he is back, but sort of hurt. I think Chiefs are going to score in this game. The question is, can the Bills score as well? Who makes the mistakes? Who doesn't make the mistakes? I'm curious what your thoughts are on this game.
When this game dropped, I think the original line maybe opened at 1 for the Chiefs, and I bet it instantly.
Yeah.
I didn't think twice. These two teams, they match up sort of the same way every
Yeah.
time, and the Chiefs just simply have so many more ways to beat you. And I just think like I just didn't think that hard about this. And maybe, maybe that'll look silly, but there's a lot of people who are sort of saying like this is Josh's time. This is, is this going to happen again? Like I don't think a
You
team
can't
has
bet on
played.
someone because it's their time. That's
Yeah.
really silly.
It's always Chiefs time, by the way. I don't believe in the history of the playoffs. I think Aaron Rodgers has played the 49ers, I think 4 times and lost all of them in the playoffs. I think that would be, or maybe it's 3. But I think Josh Allen, if he were to lose again to Kansas City, I think that would be the first time a quarterback's lost 4 times the same team. But like go up and down this roster, like put the quarterback thing aside. The Chiefs, it's sort of like the Commanders thing where it's like the Chiefs kind of have them everywhere. Like they just kind of do. And Buffalo was lucky to win that game last week. And I think Kansas City, if you like had a real conversation with the team, is much happier to be playing Buffalo than Baltimore. Like Buffalo could have lost that game a bunch of ways. And the thing that I think we forget about every playoffs, there's always like one odd Sean McDermott choice a game. And I think last week it was the 4th and 2 or whatever it was at the end of the game where he decided to kick and go up 8 instead of going for the touchdown. And it obviously ended up working out, but there are those kinds of things where you're like Buffalo in these big moments, you almost kind of feel their like trauma from the decades of the
Yeah.
past where they
Oh
like
yeah.
won it so badly where I just kind of feel like they kind of push a little too hard in a few spots and overthink a few things. And that might just be like the stupidest
Yeah.
analysis
No, no,
anyone's
no,
ever
no, no,
heard.
because no, no, I'll explain it to you. I think that when I don't think I know this, when you can't beat someone, you try to do extra things and you overthink the moment. You do a little bit too much. And that does get the Bills in trouble sometimes. I remember the fake punt last season, this horrific call for a fake punt. They,
Yeah,
they just have these moments. And I thought against Baltimore too, they got super conservative in the third quarter. Like they didn't have to get that conservative. Baltimore, I think if Mark Andrews catches that pass, who are you taking to win in overtime? Baltimore or Buffalo?
Buffalo. By the
But
way, they would have still had all that time. Like they
Buffalo
would
or
have, I think they
Baltimore?
would have gamed anyway. Buffalo,
Oh, you think
both
Buffalo
ways.
wins the game anyway?
Yeah,
Okay. Um, I just I, look, the turnover thing is hugely important in this game. The trauma, as you mentioned, is hugely important. The coaching is hugely important. Um, the Bills' offensive line is really good, so that helps them a lot with Chris Jones and other issues that the Chiefs bring. The pressure schemes the Chiefs do. I think Buffalo's gonna have a hard time throwing the ball. You put Watson, McDuffie, man coverage on those Bills wide receivers, and who's open in this game? It's gonna become a Josh Allen game, which we'll see with my best bets coming up in a few minutes. Um, it's again, I just sort of trust the Chiefs till I'm proven otherwise in this game, and maybe that's a pretty simplistic handicap, but
we've seen this movie. I agree, and I
yeah,
feel bad that I didn't sort of have like another Zag. But honestly, like
I,
the
I
other
took the
thing,
Chiefs money line immediately when the number came out.
yeah, I'm happy to lay the one, even the 1.5. I mean, the other thing with Buffalo that's so interesting is they're this may not matter, but this season they're 10-0 at home, 159-point margin of victory. On the road, they're 5-4. Granted, one of those was that Patriots game with a 24-point margin of victory. So they're a much better home team. They're going into a place that nobody, except Cincinnati once can go and win a playoff game. Uh, and I just think I don't know. I don't
Well,
see the
okay.
Buffalo having like this being the season where it's like, you know what, they finally have the weapons to
Yeah.
sort of just outdistance the Chiefs here. The other thing is like when Buffalo played on the road this year, they have given up some just like massive totals. Like they did beat the Lions in the dome in Detroit. They gave up 42 points. Like Goff, I think, had 5 touchdowns. The Rams put up 44 against them. Like I don't think that the Chiefs are going to have a problem moving the
I
ball,
don't think so either.
and I think it's going to be
Yeah.
fun. It will probably be a late deciding play at the end of the
Yeah,
game
something at
that
the
we'll
end.
talk about for 8
And
months, then that's
and
how
the
this
officials, of
works.
course, screwing the Bills. I mean, that's going to happen for sure.
Yeah, that's just confirmation bias.
Go listen to Nick Wright's podcast. I would imagine for that. We're not going to get into that today. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
But all right, Matt, you ready to do it, buddy?
Yeah. So we're gonna go through our 5 wagers, and then Jeff, you'll read Jackson's.
Yeah.
If you need me to share that, I will.
So for those who are again, what we're going to do, we're going to give 5 wagers. We're going to give confidence basically 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 5 points if you hit the 5 pointer, 4 points, 2 points, 2 points, 1 point, obviously. And then we'll have the picks from Jackson. Again, we all went 3 and 2 last week. I hit my 5 point. I think I ended up with the most points. Jackson might have been there too. Jackson hit the 5 point. The Saquon Barkley over was, I think, Jackson's pick last week as the
Yeah.
best the best one. So we'll do mine first, I guess. We'll do just 1 through 5.
Mhm.
So my best bet of the weekend, all of them. Josh Allen over 48.5 rushing yards. It might be 49. It's 48.5 right now. He's in the 3 Chiefs playoff games, 88, 68, 72 rush yards. He has to run the ball in this game for them to have offense, in my opinion. The way the Chiefs pressure, he's going to have opportunities. Man coverage, backs turned, opportunities. We also see the Chiefs give up a ton of rushing yards to quarterbacks. 42 to Stroud last week, way over his game average. 25 to Tua 2 years ago in the playoffs. Tua only had 74 yards rushing the entire season up to that point, Matt. 54 to Lamar, 12 to Purdy. Yards over what he does per game, and Burrow 30 yards. I think Allen over 40.5 is my favorite bet of the weekend. Fourth, I took Kansas City money line. Again, I talked about that. Not a big surprise here. Number 3, Matt. I piggybacked you from last week. Give me Noah Gray over 14.5 receiving yards here. In the postseason, 13, 23, 14, 16 yards. And I think Kelsey will be double and triple covered. Like, you'd be foolish if you're Buffalo to not double Travis Kelsey. And who does Patrick Mahomes trust right now? Xavier Worthy, maybe. Hollywood Brown, maybe. Hopkins, maybe. He trusts Noah Gray, who's been in the locker room now for 4 years. So Noah Gray over. My number 2, I'm going back to this. Jane Daniels over 32.5 pass attempts. I was 34.5 last week, Matt. And he had 19 at halftime. I was right on track. I handicapped that correctly. And then you guys won by 17 points or 14 points, and he threw the ball 8 times in the second half. And then I'm going back to the well. Kenneth Gainwell over 8.5 rushing yards. It was 9.5 last week. He had 1 carry for 10 yards. That was it. 1 carry is low for him. He gets normally 3 to 5 carries, maybe 7 carries against a bad Washington Commanders run defense. He also, I believe, according to Jackson, this is not really important to me, but 43 yards against Washington in week 11. So those are my 5 picks. We'll tweet out a graphic with this later.
Love these 5. Love how deep dive you're in on the props. Okay, so for mine, I went in a few different directions. I will have the stones to lay the 1.5 for my 5-pointer with the Chiefs.
Okay.
You and, spoiler alert, Jackson both went with the money line, so I felt I had to zag a little bit.
Okay.
The thing with I want to get the exact number, but Mahomes, when he's under a field goal, he is an all-time historic,
Yeah, it's like
dominant
12, 2 and
performer.
1 or something.
He is 7-0 straight up and against the spread as in the playoffs, as an underdog or favorite of less than a field goal. In home games, November or later, when the temperature is 40 degrees or less, he is 23-2 in his career, with his last loss in 2019. Since then, he's won 20 consecutive games outright in the playoffs. Pretty good. We're going to take the Chiefs to advance the Super Bowl and cover the 1.5. For my 4-star, I am going to go with my Commanders. I'm going to take the 6.5 and the points here. We talked about them at length. I think the coaching staff for this team and just sort of the vibe this team has, I think they're going to win the game. I think honestly that they have a good chance of just being a surprise. And, Philly, if they're dominating this game, the home field advantage and Jaden on the road, like that, this could come back to bite me. If Philly starts slow and Washington, who is last week came out, they got the ball second. They stuffed Detroit 3 and out on the first drive, and then ended up just being in charge they were down 7-0, but they still had the feel of like they were kind of rolling the whole game. Philly will not do well if that's the vibe in the stadium. Like, there is a chance that the coach could still get fired if they lose this game. Like that's, I think, where this team weirdly still is. So I like Washington to at least cover the 6.5.
Okay.
Austin Eckler, I have him going over 18.5 rush yards. So this is a little bit interesting. He had an integral role in the rushing attack last week.
Yeah.
The backfield's kind of split. Robinson got 53% of the plays. Eckler got 37% last week.
I like.
I think Washington's going to just have to keep Philly on its toes on the defensive line. So I anticipate a lot of the RPO stuff, and Eckler is just such a dynamic receiving back. I think he'll be highly utilized, and they're just going to do a bunch of goofy stuff in the backfields.
I
He
like
got this.
Eckler. I like Eckler over receiving too, by the way.
Yeah, he last game against Philly he had 8 catches, and then last
Yeah.
week I think he had one run that would have topped this number. So I like Eckler, and Robinson last time he played Philly fumbled twice. So keep that in mind. So there might be some, you know,
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes. Last two, Xavier Worthy over 3.5 rushing yards. So the Chiefs, if I'm remembering the stat from Stuckey correctly, Brendan Action Network, I think in their last 18 playoff games, they've had a non-running back carry the ball.
That's
Uh,
correct.
so that's McCall Hardman's not going to be playing in this. Like Worthy is the guy. So all he has to do last week, he had one carry for -8. I feel like this week, that probably isn't going to happen again. If he gets one carry, it's pretty likely to go over 4 yards. Um, so I like Worthy as a little 2-star kind of throw in. And then my last one, speaking of rush yards, Patrick Mahomes to go over 25.5. In his previous games against Buffalo in the playoffs, he averages 31. His career average is 25 yards rushing. He only runs when they need him to. This is the time where they need him to run. He's going to have one of those 15-yard scrambles to ice the game in the fourth quarter that he always seems to.
Yeah.
I thought this was a low number, and I like it. So one point for that one.
Mahomes is he just when he rushes the ball, it just seems to always be backbreaking, doesn't it?
Always. He saves it. He doesn't run all season, and then in the playoffs, you're like, oh, right, he's like a baseball player. Like he's fast. Like he can get between, you can get in small spaces quickly. So
Yeah. Um, all right. So for Jackson, the 5 picks for Jackson quickly. Austin Eckler over longest rush, 8.5 yards.
like that.
Over in 5 of his last 8 games, 35-yard rush last week versus Detroit. Again, the third down rush is a possibility here too, as well. Travis Kelce over 67.5 receiving yards. This is now like 70.5, by the way. Um, I, I,
I don't like
it's,
that one,
is
Jackson.
it's
Jackson.
juice so high that like, but you don't want to take the under either, right?
Right.
So here's Jeremy Chin over 2.5 assists on tackles. Okay. I took Matt Milano, by the way, over 5.5 tackles this weekend. Tackles
Hmm.
plus assists. So Pacheco over 8.5 rush attempts, and then Buffalo money line, 1-star play.
Huh. Interesting.
Come on, Jackson. It's a lot to so Clete Blakeman, the referee. Home teams do not win a lot of games he referees for some reason.
Interesting.
They're gonna. Do you think they penalize the Chiefs a bunch this game just so they just don't have to hear about it?
I don't know, actually. That's an interesting zag. Um, I will say the Kelsey thing, I said I didn't like it. I want to be clear why. The last time, I think that the Bills are going to sell out against Kelsey because they basically I don't think they're going to be fooled by
They
his sort
should.
of slow start. I mean, the last time these two teams played in the Buffalo game that they won, he had 4 targets, 2 catches for 8 yards. Like they know what they're doing. And then, in the past, obviously, Kelsey has been so dominant in well, the last time they played in the playoffs, he had
Yeah,
5 for 75 and 2 touchdowns. So they're not going to get beat by Kelsey. So I like your
I
gray
agree.
play a bit better, but the computer might have us topped.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get the computer on this one. All right. I hate to rush everyone off this. Your boy has to go take his son to a baseball lesson. We only have 2 games this week. We'll be back next week. We'll do a fun episode next week, Matt. We'll figure something out. We're not going to bet in the Pro Bowl, but we'll have something for you guys next week. Maybe do
Yeah,
some mailbag,
for our
early
teams
Super
that
Bowl.
are in the Super Bowl, I think
Yeah,
we'll have something to
early
talk
Super Bowl
about.
preview, and then we'll be here Super Bowl week as well, and then we'll figure something out. We'll figure it out. We're not probably going to do NBA props or basketball props with Jackson. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll have some fun with it. All right, everyone. Have a great weekend watching ball. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please rate, review, subscribe. We will talk to you guys next week. Take care, everybody.
Pine Sports. It's promo code
Subscribe.
Geoff.
Yes.
Subscribe.